We both want the same thing, Musashi. But there's only room for one at the top.
Hello, everybody. We are here with the Onimusha Way of the Sword developers, and we are going to interview them about the game. And could you please introduce yourself?
Onimusha Way of the Sword ディレクターのNiheiです。よろしくお願いします。
Nihei-san, he's the director for Onimusha, and this is Kadawaki-san, he's the producer on Onimusha.
Great. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview. The last truly mainline Onimusha was Onimusha Dawn of Dreams in 2006. Why did it take so long for this franchise to return in this way?
So actually, within Capcom, there have been a lot of people who have been clamoring for a new Onimusha title for a very, very long time. However, because as you know, Capcom is developing several titles every year, it's actually very difficult to get the right people and also the right number of people together to develop a new title. So things didn't really come together until the beginning of 2020 when we were able to get the right staff in place to start working on a new Onimusha title. By coincidence, also, 2020 was around the time when RE Engine really kind of blossomed into a very capable engine. So it happened just to be the right place at the right time with the right people.
Souls-like games have been extremely popular lately, and a lot of people that have never played Onimusha are comparing Onimusha to a Souls-like. How does this differ from that genre?
So one thing that really separates Onimusha from other action titles is that this is not just a straight up samurai action game. This is a samurai action game that really takes the typical concept of a samurai and infuses it with a lot of dark fantasy elements, and that by doing that we kind of combine a lot of reality and entertainment nuances together into one really cool package. You can see in the presentation that we had during this event, Miyamoto Musashi is equipped with the Oni Gauntlet that allows him to absorb souls and allows him to perform really cool moves such as the Isen mechanic from the previous games. So putting all that together, we get something that's very satisfying and very entertaining action-based combat.
Originally, Onimusha was spun off kind of from the Resident Evil franchise. There was a lot of comparisons to that when it debuted. How has Resident Evil's continued success impacted Way of the Sword?
Yeah, it's true that Onimusha did come from the Resident Evil series, but right now they're two completely different franchises with a completely different playstyle. So we're really focused on emphasizing some of the cooler parts of Onimusha that you can experience in the Resident Evil series. However, one of the things that is really helping the Onimusha development is because we're both using RE Engine as the structure for our games. Is that some of the elements that they were able to develop for Resident Evil, we were able to kind of share knowledge between the two teams and implement some of their customization, some of their upgrades to RE Engine into Onimusha version of RE Engine so that we can use the same kind of technology.
We saw in the gameplay demo the boss weak points. Can you explain that a little bit more?
So that element is called the break Isen in the game, and actually if you notice in some of the bigger boss fights, there's actually another gauge underneath the health gauge that represents the stamina for both Musashi and his opponent. So obviously when you attack the opponent, that goes down naturally, but if you're able to do a parry or something a little bit more timing based, that actually goes down a lot more. And once you're able to break that stamina and deplete it fully, you're able to knock them down and choose a body part that you want to attack. Now those body parts will give you different effects depending on what you choose. So you can either choose to go for more damage or you can go for gathering more souls. One thing that's really cool about this break Isen system is that we have several boss fights in the game, but all the animations for those different body parts when you act are all completely unique to one another. So there are no canned animation, there are no reused animations within those boss fights.
Very cool, very cool. Our rival character has Oni Gauntlet as well, and this time the Gauntlet is actually speaking to our main character, Can you tell us more about that?
そうですね、この武蔵のライバルには
Okay, we'll start off with Ganru first. As you explained before, he does have he is in possession of another only gauntlet, same as Musashi. And if you're familiar with Japanese history, Musashi and Ganru are actually real life rivals, and so that kind of plays into the whole story of Onimusha as well. They are both kind of on opposing sides. They also have they both have the only gauntlets, but how they use them are. How comfortable they are with it are completely different. Musashi is looking to become the best swordsman in Japan, but he has a certain amount of pride. He doesn't feel like he needs the power of the Oni Gauntlet to help him achieve his goals, and he's actually actively looking to get rid of it. However, on the other hand, Ganru is fully embracing the powers of the gauntlet, but for its different purpose. Instead of helping people, he's actually slaughtering people. So there's a big contrast between them, and I think it's very interesting how that narrative is going to play out within the game. In terms of the voice that you hear from Musashi's Gauntlet, that's actually the voice of the woman that you saw in the trailer that we just released at the very end. That's her visual representation, and she actually acts as a kind of a guide to Musashi, kind of accompanying him on his journey along the way. What happens between them, and how their relationship grows. That's something that we hope that players can look forward to in the future.
Because of Musashi, are there any connections to the recently released anime of Onimusha?
全く関係ありません。
Onimusha with the Sword is a completely original story, so it has no relation to the Netflix animated series.
The original Onimushas had some puzzle solving and a lot of exploration and backtracking. Can we expect to see that in Way of the Sword?
ですね、
The puzzle elements in Onimusha with the Sword are a little bit different from the previous Onimusha games. I believe there's some like an unlocking elements with treasure chests and whatnot. But for this series, is actually kind of woven a little bit more into the narrative. So you're going to be encountering some, places where you're not going to be able to progress forward with the story until you're able to solve a puzzle. So we have those kind of elements in there. In terms of backtracking and whatnot, there's not really that much of those kind of elements in the game right now.
There are also, other playable characters sometimes in Onimusha. Can we expect to see that in Way of the Sword?
For Way of the Sword, there's only Musashi who's going to be a playable character. However, he's going to have allies along the way, and those are going to be characters that are going to support him both from a narrative sense and from a gameplay sense. So I think people are going to be able to enjoy a full cast of characters.
Speaking of a cast of characters, Onimusha 2 has the hub area, and you can give gifts to characters. Can we expect anything like that?
今回の鬼武者新作ではそういうそのプレイ
Fortunately for fans of Onimusha 2, we don't have those kind of elements in this game. Sorry.
Well, good. Weapon types also. A lot of different weapon types throughout the series. All we saw in the gameplay demo was the sword and the twin daggers. Can we expect, a suite of weapons?
主要武器武蔵は、
The combat for Way of the Sword really centers around just a single katana that Musashi has. But as you see in the presentation, when you defeat enemies, you can get blue souls and you can absorb them, and that actually allows Musashi to summon up different weapons temporarily for special attacks. As you can see in the presentation, they had the dual daggers that came out, and in the trailer you can see the war clubs that came out as well. So during those times, you'll see temporarily that Musashi is using different weapons.
Ooh, I love that. I also, on a side note, I really love how he puts his sword away after combat encounters. Super cool. Can you tell us about maybe where it takes place in the timeline in relation to the older Onimushas?
まあ今回鬼武者
So Onimusha Way of the Sword takes place during the Edo period in Japan. However, this is actually a completely original story, and it doesn't actually have any connection with the other games. So it's actually not part of any sort of timeline with the other games. It's kind of a standalone title.
Awesome. We also saw some civilians running through, one section. Musashi passed them by. Can you interact with civilians in any meaningful way?
So we haven't shown it through any trailers or anything just yet, but there will be some NPCs within the game that you can interact with and get side quests from later on.
Awesome. And then just kind of a general question, can you elaborate just kind of on the flow and the philosophy of combat?
So basically, there's a kind of like a gameplay loop within the battle system. So when you're encountering enemies, of course you're gonna attack them, and when you do attack them and defeat them, the souls come out and they start floating around. When that happens, you have a choice whether to continue attacking enemies or if you're gonna absorb them and gain access to new techniques during battle and whatnot. So that's gonna play a very strategic have a very strategic element to the battle system. Yes.
Yeah, and
So actually, another new element that hasn't been present in past Onimusha games is that not only can Musashi absorb the souls, but also enemies can also absorb those souls. So and once they do that, just like Musashi, they get access to brand new attacks. So it really becomes a game of really becomes a situation where you have to decide: are you going to get those souls now and kind of risk get access to the moves now, or are you going to kind of risk everything and leave them there for enemies to pick up and use them against you?
Yeah, on a side note, when those blue floating ones in the old ones stole my souls, I was always really sad about it.
気持ちがあったので Yeah, that's one of the things about the battle system that we really like right now, because before you just went on the offensive and you just got the souls whenever you wanted to, but now you really have to kind of think about when do you want to get those souls. Do you want to risk getting them now and kind of leaving damage on the table, or if you want to go for the damage now and kind of risk your enemies being powered up and doing more damage to you. So it's going to be a very interesting exchange between you and the enemy in those situations.
And then just two more questions. There was a 7-year gap between the Onimusha 1 and 2 remaster. Can we expect a similar wait for 3, or could we get 3?
早く取り掛かりたいと思います。はい。
Yes, that's something that we really want to kind of start talking about as soon as possible. Yes.
やりたいと思います。
Sweet. And then lastly, just a fun one. Do you have a favorite samurai movie?
He doesn't really have a particular favorite samurai movie in particular, but there are kind of like some signature scenes from a lot of samurai movies that he really enjoys. One of them is being when samurai is kind of like just like kind of jaunting around, being kind of like a little bit of a ruffian, kind of like just wandering around the countryside, whatnot. Another one is when all of a sudden he's just in a village or something and suddenly gets surrounded by a whole gang of bandits or something like that. He really likes those kind of scenes. So yeah. There's no particular movie that he likes. There is a TV drama that he actually likes. It's called Hisatsu Shigoto Nin, which is it's a kind of a period piece TV show that he particularly likes.
Awesome. Thank you both so much for taking the time, and I just cannot wait for Onimusha Way of the Sword.